There we are. Does anyone notice anything different? Haircut? Anything else? Oh, now you do. I got a coat on. Ah, look at that. Yeah, the wall. Yeah, the wall, the lights. I came by yesterday, make sure everything was done the way that whoever's in charge wanted it to be done. And I asked for new lights from Tater. And so I came by, and the old fluorescents were still there. And I was like, well, okay, we'll get them next week. And then they're here this morning, so I don't know when he got here to do it. But anyway, after I left? Okay. So they were the fluorescent, those really ugly blue fluorescent lights that were back here. Only one of them worked out of the two. And so I asked for can lights. That's a bit warmer. You know. Anyone get baptized real quick? We can do it. Okay. Just double check. Everybody good? Okay. All right, we're going to be in Habakkuk this morning, which is the only way to say it. Anyone have a different variant? No. Amen. Good old Nahum. Got picked on all class. Habakkuk, he only got one. I called him Habakkuk when I was a new convert. I figured that's how you said it. And then my preacher was like, it's Habakkuk. I was like, oh, okay, sure. It's a made-up word anyway. Sure, let's just roll with it. To get started, I think we do have a video. Maybe. Okay, we're going to try it. The Bible Project is the resource that we normally use to introduce a book. It gives you a visual overview of what the book's all about. That's helpful to kind of keep things... There he is. Hey. All the way from Washington State. So I'll keep on stalling. So it's a good idea to have an overview before you get there. I mean, the ESV, if you have one of those around, they usually have an introduction at the beginning. Before you read a text of that book in some length or detail, I always go back and read the intro again to remind myself what I'm about to walk into. That's extremely helpful, I find, to kind of keep my mind right when it comes to what I'm reading and when it was written and to whom it was written and all those kinds of things. So I'm going to keep stalling. And
justice and idolatry. He saw the rising threat of Babylon on the horizon, and that was not good news for anybody. But unlike the other prophets, Habakkuk does not accuse Israel. He doesn't even speak on God's behalf. Rather, all of his words are addressed personally to God. promise that Habakkuk is supposed to write down. It's that God will bring Babylon down. God says that the violence and oppression of the nations creates this never-ending cycle of revenge, and that God will use this cycle to bring about the rise and fall of nations. And the fact that God might for a time use a corrupt nation like Babylon does not mean that he endorses everything that they do. He holds all nations accountable to his justice, and so Babylon will fall along with any other nation that acts like them. God's promise is then elaborated by a series of 5 woes that describe the kinds of oppression and injustice that's perpetrated by nations like Babylon. The first 2 target unjust economic practices, like how wealthy people will charge ridiculous interest just to keep poor people in debt, and so they build their wealth through crooked means. The third woe is a critique of slave labor, treating humans like animals and threatening them with violence if they don't produce. The fourth woe targets the abuse of alcohol by irresponsible leaders. While people are suffering under their bad leadership, they're partying and wasting their money on sex and booze. And the last woe exposes idolatry, the engine that drives such nations. They have made money and power and national security into their gods, offering these allegiance at all costs. And so people become slaves to their own national empire. Now, the practices described here aren't unique to Babylon, but that's part of the point. Given the human condition, most nations eventually become Babylon. And so this is how God's answer to Habakkuk in this book becomes God's answer to all later generations, to anyone who lives in a world ruled by other Babylons. But it leaves the question hanging. Is God going to let this cycle, the rise and fall of Babylon-like empires, go on forever? And that question is what chapter 3 is about. We're told that this is a prayer of Habakkuk, and it begins by Habakkuk pleading with God to act now in the present like he has in the past in bringing down corrupt nations. And what follows is a very ancient poem. It first describes a powerful, terrifying appearance of God. It's very similar to the opening poems of Micah and Nahum, and similar to the appearance of God at Mount Sinai in the book of Exodus. There's cloud and fire and earthquake. When the Creator shows up to confront human evil, everybody will be paying attention. Habakkuk then goes on to describe this future defeat of evil as a future exodus. So just like God came as a warrior and he split the sea in his battle against Pharaoh, Habakkuk says that God will once more bring his judgment down on the head of the evil house. So Pharaoh, like Babylon, has become here an archetype of violent human nations. But at the same time, we're told that when God confronts evil, he will save his people and his anointed one. It's a reference to the king from the line of David. And so in this poem, the Exodus story of the past has become an image of the future Exodus God will perform. He will once again defeat evil and bring down the pharaohs and the Babylons of this world. He'll bring justice to all people and rescue the oppressed and the innocent. And it's this hope that enables Habakkuk to conclude the book with hopeful praise. Even if the world's falling apart with food shortage or drought or war or whatever, he will choose trust and joy in the covenant promises of God. And so Habakkuk, by the end of this book, becomes a shining example of how the righteous live by faith. Habakkuk recognizes just how dark and chaotic the world and our lives can become, and he invites us into a journey of faith, of trusting that God loves this world more than we do, and that he will one day deal with its evil. And that's what the book of Habakkuk is all about.
All right.
Okay, class.
We got to watch an ad. Y'all ready for an ad? No. So that's what I like to do when it comes to a new book, right? Go and see an overview of what it looks like, what the main questions are, get a sense of what the book is going to be talking about, and then diving into the text and then reading it and then answering some questions and having some questions about the actual text itself. If you have an ESV with you, we've been reading through the ESV. That's my favorite translation in the English. So I'm going to read the introduction of that. So if you have one, follow along. If not, then just listen for just a few moments. Habakkuk was probably written about 640 to 615 BC, just before the fall of Assyria and the rise of Babylon or Chaldea. God used Assyria to punish Israel in 722. Now he would use Babylon to punish Assyria and Judah. This prophecy would be fulfilled several decades after Habakkuk in 586. The theme question of Habakkuk is, how can God use a wicked nation such as Babylon for his divine purpose? God judges all nations, said Habakkuk, and even Babylon would eventually be judged. And Babylon fell to Persia, or the Medo-Persian Empire, in 539. Though God's ways are sometimes mysterious, the righteous shall live by his faith, from chapter 2, verse 4, while awaiting salvation. These words are quoted 3 times in the New Testament: Romans 1:17, Galatians 3:11, and Hebrews 10:38. So, any questions about the intro before we dive into the actual text? I mentioned last time that we are going to be rolling through the smaller books because the minor prophets that were quite larger are all behind us, and all the ones before us are even minor than the minors, so they're small little books, right? And they have one little idea, one nugget of wisdom to share, and then we move on. And the better we understand the minor prophets, the better we understand the major prophets, the larger books, and then the better we understand those, the more references we get from the New Testament when you have guys like Peter and Paul and Jesus talking about what those prophecies were and what they were talking about, and how the authors didn't just write to people of their time, but there was some kind of echo or shadow in the future that they were alluding to, and that was all fulfilled under Christ. So that's why we're doing the study to begin with. I don't think we spend enough time kind of diving a little bit deeper into some more obscure books that we have in our Bibles. Okay, let's begin reading. Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 1. The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. And then verse 2, we transition. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear, or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. So this is a different kind of style, right? Every prophet thus far, essentially, besides maybe Jonah, you've got this dialogue of the prophet speaking on God's behalf to the people that are corrupt and they're idolatrous and they're perverting justice, and they're saying, you guys better change or else there's a big empire coming to take you away captive. And this is not that at all. This is a prophet, a man of God, a righteous person by all indications, and he's got a question for God. So he's not questioning the leadership or the prophets or the priesthood of Israel. He's questioning God, how long is this going to go on before you show up? Now, has anyone else felt that way when something in your life's not quite the way it's supposed to be, and then you take it up with God? Anybody else had a situation like that? A couple of times? Yeah, I've had a couple of moments where I'm like, what in the world is going on? I think you're in control, but looking at my life, I wouldn't, say confidently that you're really interested in what's going on here. But here you have the prophet saying, listen, this is not the way that you designed all of this to work. You have the unjust, the unrighteous people, and they're controlling all the righteous people, and we're being persecuted and suffering through this. Where are you, is the question, essentially. And then verse 5. This is softer than the response that Job got. If you know the response that Job got, this is a bit kinder, I would say. Look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astounded, because I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. I like that response a lot, because Habakkuk, just looking at what's happening around him in his nation, the people's nation of Israel, he's saying, where are you? And he goes, I'm very busy. Meaning, I'm not just too busy for you, I am working in your midst, and if I told you the plan, you wouldn't believe it. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans. the bitter and hasty nation who marched through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. So who are the Chaldeans? Babylonians, right? Okay, so far, we've really had just the Assyrians talked about, and then we had a little bit of kind of a foreshadow of what Babylon would be. Technically the third Babylonian kingdom, because you got the old one back in the day, you got the kind of newer one that was all right, and then you've all right meaning not as powerful as the third iteration. Third iteration came along, and they were the ones that we know historically some more details about, because we've got this record and we have their records as well, or some of them anyway. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their injustice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than swifter? Sounds wrong, but they're more swift. There we go. Than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an evil, swift to devour. So we have that kind of image of how destructive they are as a military force. Verse 9, they all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress because they pile up earth and take it. So again, we're in Habakkuk chapter 1, just finished verse 10. So we look at this particular description of the Babylonians now, and it's a little bit different, but similar to that of Assyria, right? We know historically Assyria would have been a bit more brutal when it comes to the way that they would take a nation captive. But we've got some details historically from what Babylon was like, and they were brutal, but they weren't as brutal. They would allow some of their captives to continue to worship their national gods or city gods, and that would kind of keep the peace with the people, and then tribute money would be usually taken a bit easier, right? Verse 11, then they sweep by like the wind and go on, guilty men whose own might is their God. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts? Rachel.
So many places in the Bible, that exact issue comes up. Hubris, pride.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the big three, right? The pride of life. Those things that we all find, which is going to be leading us to sin if we allow it to control ourselves. So the pride of life, yeah, I mean, they had reason to be proud when it comes to how powerful and strong they were, but the reason for their pride shouldn't have been how strong they all are as an empire or a nation, but it should be the idea that they're trusting in God, right? But only one nation really had that going on. Okay, so we have this. Go ahead, Lisa.
It says, this is the message that the prophet Habakkuk received in the vision. Is he interpreting the vision that he got of how the people are behaving and what God intends to do? Because, it's the Lord's answer to his message. You see what I'm saying?
Kinda. I'm trying. Are you saying that this is the reaction he's having to the people is a part of the vision that God gave him?
Yes, it's like the vision, interpreting or figuring out what Habakkuk is saying to the Lord is that the vision that the Lord sent him
Oh, I see.
is of what he's living in and aware of every day.
I think when you read the first line there, that's more of an introduction, not to just the specific context of chapter 1, part A. We're looking at the entirety of the book. Whenever you have a prophet writing a book, he's writing on papyrus. He's beginning the oracle or the vision or the prophecy, and the entire book encompasses that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just a little backwards.
Okay. Well,
To some of the simpler ones.
tell the guy in charge. That's, hey, the way you're doing it's wrong. but I'm pretty confident he's not talking about the vision or the oracle just being this context right here. He means the entirety of the actual scroll that was written, thus inspired, and then preserved for hundreds and thousands of years now for us to read. So that's the oracle. Okay? Okay. All right. So we have a question from Habakkuk. What are you doing? The people are all bad. If you want to simplify that a lot. And then you've got God saying, hey, I'm working. I got stuff going on that if I told you what it was, you wouldn't believe it. I'm going to be using the Chaldeans or the Babylonians to bring about change. Things are going to be changing here dynamically in the future. Strong nation. And then you've got Habakkuk saying, what? Right, verse 12. Are you not from everlasting, O Yahweh, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. Okay. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof or correction. Right? You, who are of purer eyes than to see evil, and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? So to kind of simplify that, he's saying, aren't you a holy God who can't look at sin, can't deal with sin? So how are you able to look at this sinful nation, the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, and use them to punish your so-called righteous people, your chosen nation? Which is, I think, a fair question, right? There's always been this problem when it comes to humans trying to understand the world around us. Because we're told that God is all-powerful. Is that a true statement? We're also told that God is all good. Is that a true statement? So how can we have a all-powerful, all-good God and then live in a world that he supposedly made, which has so much evil in it?
Because we're fallen and he gave us free will.
That's, yes. But that question, that one that is so difficult to wrap our human minds around from our perspective here on this earth, is damaging to a lot of people who want answers that are definitive.
To me, it shows his power of God.
Okay?
The fact that he can use someone that chooses to do evil to bring about his purpose. He did it with Pharaoh. No matter what they are, he's still in control.
Yeah.
So he takes that nature and works it for good for his purpose.
That's all true. And we're coming from it from one particular perspective, which makes sense because we're all here at a church building in the morning talking about the Bible, right? Not the most usual thing for people to do on a Sunday morning, but it's what we're doing. If you talk to someone who has been challenged with that idea before, an all-powerful, all-good God, and thus we live in a world that's not all good because he is all-powerful, that either means that God either isn't all-powerful to control the good around us, or he's not all good and he uses evil to bring about his will, which apparently is all around us. It's a tricky thing for someone to wrestle with. And I sympathize with that because Habakkuk's doing the very same thing right here in this book. He's revealing to us he's got that same kind of gymnastics he's trying to play with. But you're from everlasting, you're a holy one, verse 12. Your eyes are pure, you can't look upon evil, right? So how can you use an evil nation? That's the question he's trying to wrestle with. Verse 14. You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet, so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore, he sacrifices to his net and makes offerings to his dragnet, for by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. So he's saying here, okay, we're all here on this terrestrial ball. We're all spinning around here in the middle of space, right, on this earth. And we've got people that are just collecting other individuals to sacrifice. Verse 17, is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? And then you have chapter 2, verse 1, so-called, I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower, and will look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. So here's my problem. How can you do this? They're so corrupt. They're so evil. They're killing all your people. I'm going to stand right here until you answer me. Okay? A little bit of irony going on in chapter 2, verse 1. I will station myself on the tower. Our tower is usually high or low. Usually high. That's the whole point of a tower, right? And so we're getting closer to heaven and closer to God. So not quite a mountain, but he's here in the city. Questions? Thoughts?
Being quite bold, going straight to the point.
Yeah.
That a lot of the others just sort of skirted
He reminds me of somebody.
around. An admirable quality, I would say.
I think you would say.
Just to keep this up, or shall we proceed?
Well, I do enjoy it. So when I first got here, I said I wanted a Sunday morning class to do a textual study. We did Mark already. If you don't remember, we did Mark, right? Remember Mark? Somewhere in the New Testament? We did that whole gospel account together, and then I wanted to do something in the Old Testament. I usually flip-flop right for a while, then have transitions, because I need variety. If I'm in Isaiah for 3 years, I mean, if I'm bored teaching it, you're going to be bored listening to it. You're not going to show up anymore. You'll go to Dave's class. So, I mean, I get it. So the idea of us kind of having some variety, doing different things, but also having time where we can, as a congregation, kind of put our minds together and see what we already know and learn some new things, hopefully, over time. That's why I wanted the class. But it's also a way for me to feel out the people. Before I knew who you guys were, as well as I do now, I could tell whose personalities were coming through stronger, let's say, than others. Right? The infamous pew back there? Yeah. And then you sucked up my wife from her island of peace and silence over there. Bad influences. Anyway, the point being, yes, he's getting straight to the point here. Was this was this all of the conversation that Habakkuk had with God? I mean, probably not, right? This is just one particular situation where he had a problem and he got an answer, and it was apparently more imperative enough that he had to write this book to instruct the people about this problem that he personally had, because when Habakkuk was useful was when they were taken away as a nation to Babylon, away from Israel, and they might have that same question. You with me? So if Habakkuk's having this problem before they're taken away captive by the Babylonians, how can a good, righteous God use an evil nation to punish his people? When his people are being punished, they're going to have that same exact question. And guess what? Habakkuk already answered that question for them in this book. Okay?
Not only that, but in answering this question, he gives them hope
Yeah.
while they're in captivity.
So all the prophets gave, here's the bad news, but there's something coming in the future. And we have the benefit of hindsight to know what that thing in the future was. We're not waiting for it. We can look back in the New Testament and see, oh, it's the Messiah. He came. Okay, so then here we go, chapter 2, verse 2. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. Different translations put that a different way. What's the sense of verse 2? What's the meaning of it?
Urgency.
Okay.
This is about to happen, they're just gonna have to take it with them on the go.
Okay. Who has a different translation? Maybe New King James, King
Mine
James?
says, so a runner can carry the correct message to others.
Okay.
So one may easily read it.
Okay. That.
One says Harold.
Okay. Well, that's Kerusso in the Greek, but it's a little
But
bit
it does
different.
give it.
Yeah, so I think,
So that whoever reads it.
okay, so the idea here is, here's the message. This is just for you, Lisa. Write it so clearly, so understandably, and so large that when someone runs by these tablets that you're going to write on, they can get the meaning and go tell others. So here it's not veiled, it's not a metaphor, it's not just a parable, it's not poetic language. Here it is, plain, simple, easy. One of the few times that God makes things plain and simple and easy, by the way. We'll come back to that. Okay. 4, still the vision awaits its appointed time. There's something happening here and it's not quite here yet. It hastens to the end, it will not lie. So what I'm going to say is true, although it's not quite here yet. If it seems slow, wait for it. Right? So we've got, okay, there's something happening here. I promise you it's going to happen. It's happening right now, but it's not quite here yet. Well, what are you building up? It will surely come, it will not delay. All right, what else? Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. All right, let's pause. There's a big buildup, and then maybe if you don't get the sense of it, it's kind of like, what? That's the thing we're building up here so much? So what is this thing that's happening but not quite here yet, and it will surely delay, but it will come? It's a promise that's going to happen, but not right now, but later. The righteous shall live by his faith. What in the world does that mean? Before you answer the rhetorical question, we have the answer already in the New Testament. So, if you go back to your introduction, you'll find that that little statement is used 3 different times in the New Testament. The Bible is funny about numbers, right? You've got like 12, which means kind of complete, and then you've got 13, which is kind of incomplete, and then you've got 24, which is like double complete, whatever that means, and then you've got like 7, which is good, and 6 is bad, and 3 is completeness. But if you got 3 6s, that's really, really bad, right? Well, 3 is one of those times that where it's kind of like, okay, 3 means something special. It might mean complete. So let's go over to the book of Romans, chapter 1, verse 17. The righteous shall live by faith or his faith. No, I'm just saying it could be either. Yep. Romans 1. We'll start with verse 16 for a little bit of context here. Romans, again, when you're looking at Romans, for me, visual person, you're looking at Mount Everest of faith. Right? You're looking at a journey, and it's not easy to tackle all the things that are talked about in here because Paul had not yet been to Rome. They didn't have any ability to perform miracles, so they couldn't speak by inspiration. They couldn't translate different languages without learning that language at the time of the writing of Romans. And so what Paul is trying to do is establish a very short foundation of what faith and the gospel and the law and what sin is in Rome. So when he eventually makes his way there, not the way he'd hoped, but he got there eventually, he would have people that say, I read your book. Oh, great, because that covers everything I want to be teaching you about Christianity. So this is what Romans is all about. So when you get in verse 16, talking about how much Paul wants to get there because all roads lead where? To Rome. If he can make a good, strong base of operations in Rome, it will just spread out like wildfire to the rest of the Roman Empire, which is a pretty good plan. Verse 16, for or because I am not ashamed of the good news, gospel, because it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. So it was first given to those who came from Judaism, but now it's opened up into basically everybody else. Everyone who speaks Greek or is a Gentile is the idea. And then verse 17, for in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. Now where's that from? That little quote. Habakkuk 2:4. right? It's 2:4? Am I wrong? 2:4. You got him quoting an obscure Jewish prophet before the Israelites were taken away by Babylonia, and he's saying, if you're wanting to know what this is, what this gospel thing is, it was foretold to us that the righteous shall live by faith. So the idea of righteousness is emphasized here in this particular verse. Everybody with me? It's going to be a thing we have to kind of keep going here. Okay, the righteous shall live by faith. What do you want to be before God? Righteous. How do you do it? By faith. All right, you're all with me. All right, that's the thing. Let's go back to our verses. Let's see, Galatians 3:11. Who's the author? There we go. Let's go verse 10 for a little bit of context. Galatians is like a mini Romans, right? If you know the books fairly well, you should recognize that. If you can't quite do Romans, you can do Galatians pretty easily. And when you got Galatians, you're ready for Romans. And it's one way to think about it. So verse 10, for, because we're building on a context from verses 1 through 9, but for all who rely on works of the law, which law? Of Moses, are under a curse. Okay, so if you want to just keep one part of the law of Moses, you got a problem because it's really a curse for you. Why? For it is written, cursed be everyone who does not abide by all things written in the book of the law and to do them. So if you want to keep one section of the law or the covenant of Moses, your problem is you're cursed if you don't keep all of them. Right? So if you're going to be a Jew, you got to keep the whole law. So you can't just kind of nitpick the things that you want to do from Judaism and bind that on someone else. It's a whole different context, but that's the main idea. In verse 11, now it is evident that no one is justified before God by law, for the righteous shall live by faith. So if you want to live unto God, you have to be righteous, right? The righteous shall live by faith. Okay, one more, then we'll close out our class for the morning. Hebrews 10:38. Who's the author? I got you. We don't know, right? Sounds a whole lot like Paul, though. We'll do verse 37. For yet a little while, and the coming one will not delay. That's the Septuagint quotation from Habakkuk with the build-up to the great reveal of the just shall live by faith, right? That's the build-up of the Septuagint. Verse 38, but my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. So in Romans, you've got the emphasis being, if you want to be righteous, the righteous shall live by faith. In Galatians, the righteous shall live by faith. And then in Hebrews, of course, we've got him saying, the righteous shall live how? By faith. We're going to keep the faith until the end. We're not going to go back to Judaism. We're not going to give up because of persecution. We are going to be righteous, and we shall live by faith. So when Habakkuk gets that build-up, there's something coming. It's not quite here yet. Just wait for it. I promise you it's here. You've got Paul and then the Hebrews author all saying that prophecy, that big build-up, that thing that wasn't there in Habakkuk's day, it's here. It's the Messiah. The righteous shall live by faith. And every single sentence, every single clause in that statement is powerful because that's how we live. You should be righteous. You should live, and you should live by faith. That's what Habakkuk's foreshadowing, but he had no idea what that meant when he wrote it. I can guarantee you that. But Paul and the Hebrews author said that's what it was. It's a powerful message because finally we can be righteous, we can live before God, and we can do it how? By faith. The thing that Habakkuk, by the way, needed to trust in God's promises and plans. Okay, we'll pause there. That's the beginning of Habakkuk. And then we'll move on from there, Lord willing, next week as well. Thank you so much for your time and your attention this morning. We'll be dismissed now for about 18 minutes before worship begins.